All right, everybody, welcome back to coverage here of the MagicOnline Champion Showcase. My name is Corey Baumeister, that's Anuraag Das, and we are starting to heat up this Modern portion. We're in round number 2 of Modern. That means we have 4 players that won their first round and still have a chance to make it into the finals to play against Matthew Wright. And, spoiler alert, Matthew Wright is not one of them. So no matter what, we will have a grand finals. Matthew Wright will not be doing the perfect sweep that we've only seen from boy wonder Nathan Stoyer in the past. So we are going to be taking a look at our first matchup here. We're going to be showing you both of these semifinal matches, essentially, to see who will make it to the grand finals. If you 2-0 from here, if you're one of these 4 players, you're going to the World Championship. It is as simple as that. So let's see who we're going to see for round number 2. Here are our players. We got Andrei on the left here, one of our newer players, but we've been saying Andrei's name a lot on coverage with this sweet Boros deck that just beat that 4-color breach deck up against Kanister. Piotr Głogowski, the Pro Tour champion, has won a ton of really, really impressive events. He's been playing the game for a long time, has that incredible win percentage, and I will just say is one of the most entertaining streamers y'all will ever see, and has one of the most unique tastes in music, I will say, when it comes to his stream. You ever tune in to the great Piotr Głogowski stream, Anuraag?
Oh, yes, I do. And I will say, as iconic as Amulet Titan is, I would say next up is the playlist that we cycle through, partly sponsored by, people who are watching in chat. So always a fun time when watching Kanister.
Always a fun time and always completely unhinged, I must say, in the best possible way. So let's take a look at Andrei's deck list as we just saw it a little bit ago. But this is a very teched out version of Boros Energy, Anuraag.
Yeah, so, Boros Energy, to nobody's surprise, is going to stay largely the same pre- and post-ban. You lose Amp Raptor, you lose the One Ring, but you still have your core, competency of Guide of Souls, Oscillate Pride. Looks like Ragavan kind of coming back into the mix. It was kind of conditional. Love to see that it is here. And then give a shout out to a couple interesting inclusions, including 4-season Pyromancer. Pretty nice with something like Flage. Synergizes with a Johnny Nakatl Pariah when it flips over. I will say that looking at this main deck, you can tell Andrei has a lot of respect for the Underworld Breach matchup. And that's going to just be denoted by the main deck. Main deck Surgical Extraction, Corey. Doesn't that just speak like a lot?
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. None of you should play this version of Boros Energy, okay? You leave Underworld Breach alone. We have done nothing but, just grind away, just have some fun, and just cast some spells from the graveyard. This is not cool, Andrei. This is far too teched out against my sweet, sweet baby. And I gotta play on one thing that you said. It doesn't get to play the One Ring, but I think the best thing for this Boros Energy deck post-ban is it doesn't have to play against the One Ring. So I think as funny as it is that card was so good it made it into aggro decks, not having to play against it just makes this deck go from what people thought was the best deck to, I still think, probably the best deck fighting for Underworld Breach as well. So now let's take a look at Kanister's deck list. And we saw this a little bit as well. This is Grinding Breach, but this is the Teamer version. And I gotta say, the Teamer version has made it to the top 4. The 2 extremely powerful members of Team Handshake on the 4-color version were both dispatched in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, so the Teamer version, obviously, you're going to have better mana here. You can see that basic island and even the sideboard basic forest to play around Blood Moon type effects. But more importantly, you're just a lot more focused with, access to a lot of the same cards, but your removal spells, they line up with your 3 colors. So you're going to see Unholy Heats now instead of Portable Holes and Prismatic Endings. You're going to see a space here for a couple additional main deck artifacts that you can tutor up with Urza's Saga. I'm looking at the Pithing Needle, for example, and the Aether Spell Bomb. And then otherwise, it's going to play a little bit the same here. I think the main thing here is that you can still execute the combo with Deadly Speed, but you get a lot of extra points against certain sideboard hate cards like Blood Moon, for example.
Yeah, I'm honestly pretty interested where the forest actually comes in. Like, I would assume it is 4 Blood Moon matchups. Like, maybe we'll get a good look of him sideboarding against this. But for me, it's like, well, you don't really need the forest as, you can just get green mana off MOCS Opals and stuff. But I guess you are playing around your opponent having Stony Silence and Blood Moon, because if that happens, straight up, you cannot have green mana. So I think it's that. I'd be interested to ask Kanister, or maybe you can let us know in the comments below why we would need that, as that's a new one for me, but I will never question the great Piotr Głogowski. I've used a lot of his lists. He's a great deck builder as well as a great player. So let's jump on into the match. These two players are ready to go. One of these players will be heading to the grand finals to try to get a spot in the World Championship. And looking at these hands, looks like a mulligan from Piotr, and I see that main deck Surgical Extraction in hand. It's not a typo. It's sure there, Anuraag.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, in addition to the main deck Surgical Extraction, there's a copy of Thraben Charm, which is also good in the game, and that might have just been one of the best draws here. Ragavan Nimble Pilferer is going to put immense pressure, generating excess mana, all while letting Andrei now play a Drago game. We walked into Andrei winning, being up a game in our last round, and this is probably similar to what happened. Just absolute mastery dominance. I mean, if you draw like this, Breach is not going to be a problem at all.
Yeah, just you're going to have to do the rest of this match here. I got to go throw up after watching this draws here so far from the Boros Energy deck. Picking up the Ragavan is awesome here. Even just having the Ocelot Pride was going to just be a great follow-up. But the fact that you got to deal with these two really great sideboard cards in the main deck is just really difficult. So I want to remind everyone what we saw game 1 of Modern. It was Piotr Głogowski up against Eldrazi, where, we saw that that Kozilek's command was able to do some work at exiling the win con, maybe if we timed it in the right way. But with Surgical, you can take out all the MOCS Opals in that kind of scenario that we saw, and you will prevent Piotr from comboing, or you take out all the breaches, stuff like that. So Surgical, much better than Kozilek's command when trying to specifically stop the combo.
Oh, this is a cute little interaction. Anytime Ragavan puts a treasure token into play, Grinding Station's ability will trigger, if you're wondering what's on the screen right there. But yeah, it looks like Ragavan just going to generate that treasure token and gives the opportunity now to play Ocelot Pride while also holding up Thraben Charm. So just goes to show that, this Ragavan card, still pretty good. And it took a Mishra's Bauble too. Oh my goodness.
Oh God. That just feels so bad. And you say that's like a cool interaction when artifacts come into play. I consider it a disaster. Basically a design disaster, as anytime I time out with Breach, it's because I have to click an extra 20 clicks every game because of Grinding Station's annoying ability. So, there's my TED Talk and my rant. I don't like it.
Fair enough. I guess also you're not gonna like what's about to happen here to poor Kanister, because 911. I'd like to report just a heinous crime here happening to this Breach archetype. But honestly, props to Andrei for realizing and having a very fine grasp of what the metagame is going to look like. Ironically, Kanister was talking about not bringing Amulet Titan, but if people are loading up main deck Surgical Extractions, I kind of feel like Titan would be just right there doing a great job setting everyone straight.
No, you make a really good point. Like, I think, Grinding Station is a great pick, but it seems like everybody metagamed against artifacts and stuff like that, where, like, I'm looking at Andrei's list, and, I don't see a world where he would actually beat a Primeval Titan, like at all. So, we still don't know, of course, if Piotr is going to get the invite or anything like that, but if he doesn't, you got to think maybe he would regret not bringing his Pride and Joy Primeval Titan.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're looking at our options here. MOCS Amber is the pickup, which means we can actually achieve Metalcraft with our MOCS Opals, which means this turn we actually have access to 4 mana, which also means conveniently this turn we could try to win the game here. And if we do that, unfortunately for Piotr, there are 2 layers of interaction here that we're going to have to juggle through.
Yeah, we even have 5 mana if Piotr really wants to. And, I think we're going to see Piotr go for it because his hand does absolutely nothing else. The one thing we might see that would be decent for Piotr is the fact that, we can grinding station this MOCS Opal away. We can get some cards deep. And, then we can cast Underworld Breach. And maybe, just maybe, we can do what Piotr did in the first match and kind of bait out this Thraben Charm to exile the graveyard instead of trying to destroy the Underworld Breach. And then maybe, just maybe, he can figure something out. But I think if Andrei plays this correctly, Piotr's basically drawing dead already.
Yeah, I've seen Andrei play pretty meticulously throughout the course of this tournament, so I would be shocked to see Piotr take it away this game, this turn.
Yeah, so I think the only fault that we would see Piotr have a chance to win, it would begin with Thraben Charm, exile target player's graveyard, targeting Piotr right now. That's the only hope for Kanister fans, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm even thinking that, if Thraben Charm does go to exile the graveyard, there's still the backup Surgical Extraction, which will be pretty good in limiting what Andrei and Piotr both can do. I'm trying to think here. Is there a way that we could beat the Surgical Extraction if Thraben Charm goes after, for example, the graveyard?
I still think it would be tough, but it would come down to one of those scenarios that I was kind of describing in, the previous match here. It's like where you have Graveshot on the bottom of the deck and you already generate a bunch of red mana. And by the time you flip over Graveshot, you have the extra mana, usually 4. You have 4 mana available to just go Graveshot without, Andrei having priority with the Surgical Extraction. But I do think that's very tough, especially because there is only going to be the MOCS Opal being sacked over and over and being brought back. So, if you ever get the Graveshot early, number one, you just can't keep going because you have to exile your own win con when you're comboing off with MOCS Opal. So, as long as Andrei doesn't really butcher this turn, I don't see a way Piotr can do it.
All right, Underworld Breach now resolves here. So Andrei saying, hey, I'm not going to pull the trigger here on the Thraben Charm. And now that means we're going to be using the Underworld Breach to... Looks like we're floating mana for some reason.
Yeah,
casting Preordain.
Yeah, casting Preordain was the best thing that Piotr could do here because, the MOCS Opal will be able to be cast after this. Plus, you already have one in hand. So this is kind of, hedging on having one of the Thraben Charms as a way to destroy Breach. At least Piotr's kind of looking for another copy. But the way it stands is one thing that Andrei can do here is just Thraben Charm this and Surgical the Breaches. And it's going to be very, very tough to win the game with this low of resources.
Yeah, truly frightening, actually, just how powerful this hand is. But you could probably line up that this was the sequence that was going to happen based on the opening starts here. And at this point, I guess we're going to start pivoting to evaluating what Piotr's backup strategies are. The one that stands out to me the most is Urza Saga. But have you found, in your experience, Urza Saga to be enough to battle against Boros?
I actually like it quite a bit in the post-board matchups because most of the time there's just all this hate that comes in and players take out a lot of their aggressive elements. So half the time I play as a combo control deck against Boros where I'm trying to neutralize my opponent's battlefield while stumbling into either the combo or giant constructs. Basically at the end of the day, I'm always just trying to make sure that I control the battlefield first and foremost, and then figure out a way to win the game later. So, it ends up being a much slower game post-board, when they take out some of their aggressive elements. But game one, it's really tough to win with Urza Saga because you don't have sweepers. Sweepers are what allow you to control the battlefield and then start generating your own creatures.
All right. Well, this one's pretty interesting now. So there's a Mox Opal on the stack here. If Andrei lets this resolve, there's a small window where Kanister could just slam a second Underworld Breach in the hand. And that has me wondering, maybe Andrei needs to fire off the Surgical Extraction now to play a risk-free game.
It just played masterfully from Andrei. We have perfect information, and these were the perfect plays that Andrei could have taken. Piotr also played it perfectly here, but just an absolute master there from Andrei, as that was a way to just close the door. He thought of everything that Piotr could have, and big props to Andrei. I know that was a short game, but you know, it's tough to play a game of Magic perfectly, and Andrei just did it. That was incredible.
Yeah, and we're going to jump into sideboarding here, and I want to cover really quickly the changes that Kanister is making. So looks like, and maybe Corey, you kind of agree with this, we're shaving on a lot of pieces here from our combo as we prepare to transition into more of a controlling role. So we're trimming down on some of the artifact mana, trimming down on some of the unnecessary artifacts like Needle and Spellbomb, and then even Saga, Grinding Station, and Malevolent Rumble are cards that are coming out. How do you feel about this? I feel pretty strongly against boarding out Malevolent Rumble, but I could see Saga, I could see Grinding Station.
Yeah, I definitely trim in this matchup. I always trim one when it comes to bringing in this many spells, because that is the problem where if you rumble and you see Whip Flare, Unholy Heat, land, and, another spell or something, another rumble, all of a sudden your rumbles look a lot worse. They're really good when they can also find you the hate. The thing I like to do, I like to trim a rumble, I trim an Emery, I trim a Tamiyo. I usually haven't been trimming, and then Preordain is just the worst card in the deck. So whenever I'm concerned or I don't know what to take out, I always take out a Preordain. Now, the one thing I never take out is Urza's Saga, even with Blood Moons being there. But, that is, and now it just makes so much sense, and big props to Piotr. That's why the forest is there, so you can have the ability to take a land out. I never put any lands in my sideboard. Piotr had the Boseiju and a forest, so can stay at 19 land. That's some big brain stuff. I like that.
Yeah, oof. And looking at Andrei's sideboard, we did see a nice column of cards there. 2 Orm's Chant, 2 Draneth Magistrate, a Stody Silence, and triple Wear Tear coming in. So this is going to be a tough one. Kanister does not get it easy here, but if there is a player who can navigate through the duress of the situation, it's going to be Piotr Głogowski.
Yeah, absolutely. And here is one of the iconic starts. Saheeli, by the way, as well, another card that I basically never seen in a list. And, I'm a little, unsure why it's good, especially in this matchup where your opponent can be so aggressive. But, once again, hopefully him playing it here really shows off, the power of Saheeli, and maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. But it doesn't look great. But the one thing that would just lead me to snap off this hand, number one, you're already down to 6. So, you kind of got to keep a lot of hands. But a land, Urza's Saga, and a Whip Flare. Whip Flare is so awesome if your opponent ever starts with something like Oscillate Pride into a Johnny, Guide of Souls into a Johnny, Oscillate Pride into double Guide of Souls, stuff like that, where you can ever even just get a 2-for-1. That's good enough. It slows them down enough. It gets to buy you a ton of time and make Urza's Saga and other slow cards like that very powerful.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you may be wondering is, why are we playing Whip Flare instead of more popular options like the Pyroclasm? And Saheeli is just a clean answer to that question, right? Because she does make artifacts, so keeping them alive is kind of a big deal. Also kind of indicates that Kanister does have that plan in mind here, where we're just going to make a 1/1, bunch of 1/1s, and play control and attack and put you on the back foot, erring not to really rely on the breach combo as much as a win condition.
Yeah, no, I started with Pyroclasm in this, and then I swiftly went to Whip Flare, even pre-ring, or even when the ring was in there. It's so minor. At the end of the day, you don't see any artifact creatures to make it a problem, where Whip Flare and Pyroclasm aren't the same. But there have been games where I can lead on turn 1 Haywire Might, or I can make a 2/2 Saga token on end step, and then I can untap and Whip Flare. So it's such a minor thing. It just is saying to me, there's no artifact creatures across the table, but plenty of artifacts in your own deck. Not plenty, it's just Saga and Haywire Might, but that's enough.
What's really fascinating to me here, Andrei's hand going into the second game doesn't exactly have very many interaction pieces. Like, we have a very strong curve in Guide of Souls, into a Johnny, into Flage or Seasoned Pyromancer, but Galvanic Discharge really isn't that piece of interaction that you're looking for to fight against Breach. So I'm shocked to kind of see Andrei keep this hand, just given how maybe good the last one was, but maybe it's just a little bit of give and take, right? This hand might just be generically good enough to keep, and Andrei says, hey, I have such a high density of interactions that I'm bound to draw into one just naturally in the first few turns.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really like keeping this hand from Andrei just because, well, the way that Breach operates, also, we kind of skipped over this, Commercial District surveilling Grinding Station into the yard is like, the equivalent of Legacy surveilling your Archon into the yard on turn 1. It just feels so good that you already get that card you don't want to draw and a combo piece into the yard. But the one reason I really like this keep is the Breach deck slows down a lot when it brings in a lot of disruption. So it's not all in on the combo. So you actually can keep these kind of hands a little bit more. So I love the keep.
And looks like he gets rewarded too. Wear Tear is the pickup. Guide of Soul is going to come into the red zone here. And now it's just a matter of figuring out how we want to proceed. What do you think is better here? Do you just take the Stone Rain, or do you try to develop your board first?
Yeah, that is tough. I would think... we of course have Perfect Information here, and I think with Perfect Information, you just Stone Rain because you don't want to walk into Whip Flare. But... yeah, really tough. I think I would tear down the Urza Saga rather than risk getting destroyed with Whip Flare here. As next turn, you can go land 3, play a Johnny, and then if there is a Whip Flare on that turn, then you can Galvanic Discharge your own cat to flip the Planeswalker at instant speed. And this tear is kind of a time walk already, which is totally fine here. So once again, just amazing play from Andrei.
All right, pass the turn, upkeep, firing off the Urza Saga here. And to be honest, it is kind of annoying. You did want to make those constructs as a main plan here. But picking up the Malevolent Rumble is a good next step.
Yeah, that was probably the best draw here for Kanister, as you just get to, do something this turn. You don't want to go Mox Amber, Steam Vents, Emery, because you're very sure you want to Whip Flare. Whip Flare and Emery is kind of a nombo. But, I just think it's so worth it because the games don't really look like the fact that you go turn 1 Emery and then you're like, crap, now I need to Whip Flare. Well, you just don't turn 1 Emery, or if you turn 1 Emery, they have to kill it or you're going to be gaining a lot of advantage. So, it ends up working out perfectly fine where it is kind of a nombo where it kills your own creature.
Yeah, next turn too, I guess we're going to get Saheeli online, which is kind of cool. Oh, wow. This is tight.
Okay, that is interesting. And yeah, good thing Piotr didn't F6 there, as that would have yielded Andrei 2 extra energy. But when you sacrifice it, the spell does fizzle. So now, though, here is the brutal aspect for Piotr. Andrei has a great line this turn. If you go Seasoned Pyromancer, discard Flage, and either Seasoned Pyromancer or a Johnny, 3 creatures come into play, then you can send Guide of Souls to the sky, and Whip Flare doesn't clean up everything. So the way Andrei has played this game has just been masterful, because it was either, this last turn, Piotr was going to Whip Flare and cast Emery, because he would have had the Urza Saga, and Andrei would have nothing, or cast a Rumble, and now Andrei is going to have a creature that lives through Whip Flare. So, masterful play once again.
I feel like this is the Magic the Gathering equivalent of ballet, just such graceful play here. Yeah. I'm really, I cannot understate this, really impressed.
With all that being said, though, we might be done here. Let's see. We have Emery. And then that turns on the Mox Amber, which is free. So then we have Underworld Breach, but there's no 0 drop in the yard. If there was a 0 drop, I think we had it all wrapped up. Unless I'm missing something here. Well, never mind. We can hit a 0 drop off Emery, and then we win the game here.
All right, are you a believer? I kind of think it's gonna happen. There's so many zeros. We did shave a MOCS Opal, we did shave a MOCS Amber, but we could still land into something like Mishra's Bauble.
All right, I lied. You need a Bauble plus a redundant copy of MOCS Opal and MOCS Amber, it looks like. So yeah, it does not get anything of the sort. But yeah, and now Kanister just doesn't have another play. Like, even if you hit Bauble, at least you could like draw 4 cards or something, do a value breach. But as it stands, looks like Piotr just has to say go. Sad.
Yeah, you do certainly have it lined up for the next turn. If you can untap with the Emery, just buy back the grinding station. Or actually, you don't even. No, you do need the Emery because you need a legend in play for the MOCS Amber.
That might have just been a $10,000 or so Stony Silence off the top. But no, you were right the first time. Piotr does have it locked up next turn. You Emery target the grinding station, use your 2 mana to play it, then your MOCS Amber and Opal are online, then you breach and you win. So he did have it locked up if it wasn't for a piece of hate.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, I guess the other thing that Andrei could do is escape the Flage and take care of the Emery. So that might be like the most obvious play to make here. But geez, that Sony Silence off the top is brutal. It's just brutal.
Backbreaking. Like, it just shuts off so many outs. And I hate to even say this in a public setting, but Stony Silence is the best card against Breach, and I don't even utter the card's name when I'm streaming because it summons it to the battlefield.
I don't want to manifest that negative energy, It's just like,
exactly.
Why?
Yeah, because it's just so brutal. The fact that what makes Temur Breach so good is there's a lot of cards that come in from hate cards from all different kind of decks. And, that's great. Hate is good against the deck, but the Urza Saga being able to be a 4 of, and then 1 Haywire Mite in your deck just means you have a 5x answer to everything, to any hate card that can come at you. Leyline of the Voids, Pithing Needles, any kind of Nile Spellbomb, any of these kind of cards can all be dealt with those cards, with Haywire Mite, except Stony Silence. Stony Silence shutting down the artifacts makes it so you have to play spells. You have to play, Nature's Claim. You have to play more Besageus. Or, what other people are turning to, you play white for Portable Hole as a good answer. And, if Stony Silence keep up in popularity, the Portable Hole version might have to be played.
Okay, wait a second here. Andrei's taking a long time to figure out this turn.
Yeah, we're just going for lethal.
Yeah, you read my mind. Wait, is there potential? Do we, I wonder if we have these double Ajani's, is there something terrifying that we could do? Like if we had an arena, for example.
So let's do the math. So what we have on the battlefield right now, 5, 6, 7. With the 2 Ajani's, you'll get 4 creatures in play. That gives you 2 energy. So you can send the Seasoned Pyromancer to the sky. That is automatically 7 damage that Piotr will have to take, plus 1 of the elementals blocked Emery. That makes 8 damage with the other elemental. Now we get 1 activation from the Ajani, and we net 2 creatures. So, yeah, that is 7, 8... 9, 10, 11, 12, 13? Oh my God. I think it's 13.
Okay, see, that's so crazy because I looked at the Stony Silence and I was just like, oh, yeah, that's game. Just play the Stony Silence. And a player like Andrei says, wait a minute, let's just make sure. That is truly a sign of somebody who has, just understood Magic at its core, right? Discipline. And this is also one of the reasons why you play Boros, by the way, because you can just do this kind of stuff out of nowhere.
So for what it's worth, to see. I'm sorry to interrupt you here, Anuraag, but I still would play Stony Silence because if you go for this line and Kanister has an Unholy Heat, then all of a sudden that's broken up, But if you go for Stony Silence, he has to have Nature's Claim. And if Piotr already has Nature's Claim, he can still live through this turn by destroying his own MOCS Amber. So, in my opinion, I think it is a much better play to play Stony Silence, even though the win is on the table. And Andrei agrees. Otherwise, he would have played the Ajani pre-combat to send a Seasoned Pyromancer to the sky.
Okay, I will say that like the thing that really just got me thinking was like, well, maybe there's something crazy that we could do. And he did the detective work, found it out, and then evaluated the options. So it's good to know that at the end of the day, Stony Silence still is the move to make here. It's just incredible for me to think that there was something else buried in the sands there.
Yeah, and it was actually 15 damage because I didn't count the one that gets created off of Johnny. So lethal was there, but I love this play. Once again, everyone in the comments, everyone watching at home is going to be like, wow, he had it this turn, but he didn't go for it. He's playing around many, many more cards by casting the Stony Silence here. Bravo.
Yeah, and now I guess the next question is, how does Piotr want to respond to this? Like, Whipflare is going to do a great job at sort of cleaning up this board. However, there's still a Flage waiting in the wings. There's still the Guide of Souls that's going to survive here. And poof, yeah. All right, there's the Unholy Heat too.
Okay, now remember, he does only have access to 2 mana. So if you Whip Flare, that is the battlefield going away except for the Guide of Souls. We have 2 energy, so Flage coming back next turn would gain that 3rd energy. Guide of Souls would attack for 5, and Flage would win the game. So Whip Flare does not do it. So that takes that card completely off the table. And if Whip Flare doesn't do it, I can't imagine a world Unholy Heat does. Yeah.
That's actually a really good point here. So I guess, Boros Energy is going to be one of those decks that with the right package of, Underworld Breach Hate can take the matchup down, right? You just have so much board presence, like we saw earlier with the turn 1 Ragavan. And yep, there it is. That is the concession here. Looks like Kanister sees the writing on the wall, evaluates all the options, and says, you know what? You get this one. Congrats and good luck in the next round, where Andrei will be playing for a chance at the World Championship. A second chance, in fact.
A second chance. Honestly, I said it during the match. I just want to give Andrei Klepatch, just all the props in the world. That was masterfully played. You can tell he understands this matchup and understand what's important. And, even though he didn't go for the win there, he played the safer play. He played to his outs. And honestly, just masterful play. Got to give Andrei props there. Nice job, man. Nice job. That is Piotr Głogowski falling there. So all the Breach decks are out. So Breach is bad. Cut your Stony Silences. I mean, it is just not needed. The deck is unplayable, right, Anuraag?
Yeah, you saw it here. Evidence can't irrefutable. That being said, though, we'll see how the deck evolves over time. It's only day 1, week 1 kind of deal here. Still very fresh. A lot of events over the horizon to explore the true unbounded potential. What I'm trying to say is that don't listen to Corey. Stony Silence might actually be pretty good, even though I would probably play Breach. I don't know. Maybe I'm sending a mixed signal here. Sorry, Corey.
Yeah, absolutely. Whose team are you on here, Andrei? All right, I guess you're on the YouTube comments team. That is very, very fair. So something that is also very fair to our audience is more Magic. We're going to show you some more here. Here is our other backup match. Let's see the players that we're going to check out here. And I'm not going to lie, this is going to be absolutely hilarious. So here is our first look at Fernando here. FerMTG, the guy I was just absolutely hyping up in the intro here, has only been playing Magic for 4 years. Remember that number, okay? Only been playing Magic for 4 years, has a lifetime win percentage of 58.7%. That's good. Not amazing. It is not the highest or anything, but he has 5,113 matches per year. That's 14 matches every single day. Anuraag, what?
Yeah, that song is just like, wake up, Magic. Eat food, Magic. Like, I can't. That's also assuming, by the way, no breaks, no holidays, no time for vacation. So realistically speaking, the amount of Magic that Fernando plays per day is probably higher than that. I mean, truly incredible. Yeah. Oh yeah, no leap years. Yeah, devoted to the game. You love to see it.
Incredible stuff. I mean, this is just a pure case of hard work paying off. I can't say enough nice things about Fernando. Number one, the way that I first got introduced to him is we have probably played 9 times or more in modern challenges or other challenges, and it's always the win and in rounds or the top 8 or both. You know, like, so we're always playing these high stakes rounds. We're back and forth. We have a pretty much even round, and I know he's never going to give me anything. He's an incredibly good player, and I always just find it to be an incredible treat to play against him as well. He's just an extremely nice guy, to the extent, I'm going to do one last Fernando hype up here, to the extent of I was playing against him in the top 8, or in the win and in a modern challenge. I started playing Underworld Breach. I wasn't going to have time to combo. Just scooped to me and said, you know, you have this, no problem. Good luck in the top 8. I mean, that just shows some real class and something you do not see from every player. So, you know, big FerMTG fan. So let's take a look back at that head-to-head one more time and see Fernando's opponent. And that is, we got Mogged. It is, you know, one of the best MagicOnline grinders ever. If you look at a top 8 of any challenges across all formats, you know, Mogged is always there. It's a top 7 plus Mogged. He plays a ton of Magic as well. He's been playing for 10 years and qualified via Pauper. So let's take a look at Fernando's deck list.
All right, so Fernando is going to be playing what is arguably the most popular deck in Magic after the changes back in December, and that is Dimir Oculus. So this is maybe like the native evolution of, you know, what is it Murktide once used to be, but now changing out red for black, and even going so far as to change out a couple of the threat packages to include a new card, Abhorrent Oculus. Now, this one's kind of interesting. It really does have Murktide Regent vibes in that, you know, you do need to have a graveyard cost for it, and it is a 5/5 flyer, which is really good by itself. The interesting part about this card is that it will manifest dread on each of your opponent's upkeeps. So that means you get not just a giant flying, I guess it's a creature type, but you also get the tokens, the value that you're generating, so it allows you to go wide here. This is interesting because it pairs alongside cards like Unearth, which allow you to sort of circumvent the ability to the cost, the graveyard cost that Abhorrent Oculus normally has. And a very good way to get it into the graveyard is with either Thought Scour, Consider, or everybody's favorite Psychic Frog. So beyond that creature package, Corey, there are also going to be a lot of counter spells. This is playing in that tempo deck role. So you've got 3 copies of Spell Snare, 4 copies of Counterspell, and 4 copies of Force of Negation with, I'll give a shout out to Sink into Stupor.
Yeah, absolutely. And this deck is all about agency. This is the go-to control deck of the format, and it is extremely good. You know, the best 3 decks, you know, as far as the most played and honestly win percentages, Breach, Boros, and Dimir. You know, these are the top 3 decks of the metagame. You are not just seeing these decks here for a reason. If you get ready for, you know, the regional championships, those are kind of the next wave of tournaments after this, get ready to play against all 3 of these decks. They are going to be there. They're going to be the top 3 decks almost assuredly. And, you know, Modern's very diverse outside of that, but these are definitely some decks to look out for. So let's take a look at Kikidis' sideboard, or Kikidis' deck. And that is, once again, the big bad on the format. This is Boros Energy. Talk to me about this version.
It's funny that you had so many good things to say about FerMTG, because Mogged is the one player that I have battled against in Legacy, and I don't remember the last time I've actually ever beaten them. So nice to see that we just have MagicOnline demons, monsters, masters just battling it out here. This build, I mean, we know what Boros Energy is at this point, so I want to highlight maybe some of the differences here. Notably, you're going to see no Surgical Extraction compared to Andrei's list, instead the 3rd copy of Thraben Charm, and then we're going to also see 4 copies of Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Now, that is a really interesting one that is generally, you know, not something that, you know, we've seen in more recent versions of Boros Energy, but now that the One Ring is gone, you conveniently have 4 extra slots to which you can put, you know, a value type card in, and Fable of the Mirror Breaker does that task pretty well here. I guess the other difference that I'll point out is I'm seeing copies of Static Prison, which I don't recall seeing in Andrei's list. Either way,
that's a card that kind of fell off. Yeah,
exactly, right? A solid list here, and we'll see how it actually plays out. Static Prison certainly is good in this matchup.
Yeah, another thing I want to pay attention to is the sideboard here. Kikidis, once again, like looking through the lens of Breach, I mean, we have Wear Tear, Wrath of the Sky, Stony Silence, Drought of the Magistrate, Surgical, Ghost Vacuum, Deafening Silence, all cards that come in there. Breach is no longer in, you know, right now it's 2 energy decks and it is 1 Dimir Oculus decks that we have to get through. I really like, you know, the Dimir deck with all the removal it has. It ends up looking a lot better when all the sideboard hate is geared towards combo decks and stuff. But that being said, we're going to jump into the match right now with Boros Energy up a game.
All right, and looking at opening hands here, I mean, you've got kind of exactly what you're looking for. Early permission, enough mana sources, and then 2 copies of Consider really to smooth out your hand here from Fernando's side. On the other hand, you have good mana. That's the first thing. Ragavan and Guide of Souls as your turn 1 options, but more importantly, I'm looking at that 1-2 punch of a Johnny Nicodle Pariah and Goblin Bombardment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, in the broad stroke of things here, you know, that it is, this Dimir deck struggles against Boros Energy. It is not a good matchup. You know, it is not unwinnable by any means, but I think like this matchup gets a little closer now that everybody's sideboard for this event is so focused. So if Fernando is going to be able to take this down, obviously has to win the next 2 games, but those are the games where I think it does even out a little bit. But Mogg's hand is just incredible.
It really is, and there's no other way about it. Now you're under a lot of pressure here from the Ragavan. You don't want to snowball, which means you're incentivized to play the Psychic Frog, but then that leads to the next thing, which is your Spell Snare. You've gone shields down, so this is the window where Mogged is going to be able to resolve the best 2-drop possible.
Yep, but that being said, one thing is like... I'm looking at Mogg's list, and how on earth does he ever beat a frog outside of those 2 static prisons? And I don't even know that he leaves them in. So, like, it does not look easy to take this frog off the battlefield by any means.
Ooh, okay, that's a solid pickup here in the Fatal Push.
Now it'll be interesting to see if Fernando decides to kind of make a more aggressive play and discard 2 cards to the frog, or maybe discard 1 card to the frog and attack. And, you know, if you draw a card, you can then, I guess you only have to discard 1 with the fetch land, then hard cast an Arborean Oculus. Or if you want to just play this slower and just, you know, play 3 1-drops essentially, and then cast it the next turn. Looks like we are just going to hard cast this.
Yeah, looks like we're lining up to sort of get parity on the board. You mentioned earlier that Dimir is not necessarily, you know, well positioned against Boros, and I think part of the reason why is that Boros is very good at going wide for these Dimir type decks. You're going to usually see like 1 creature or 2 creatures in play, and then, you know, you're in blue, so you're going to play, you know, tempo / you know, protect the queen or king, you know, making sure that the pieces that you have stay alive and can push forward an advantage. When your opponent is going wide, suddenly you're on the back pedal because you're having to deal with a lot of uncalculated factors that would otherwise cause problems.
Yeah, absolutely well said, because once again, when you can just go wide with impunity, the fact that, you know, you just get to always vomit your entire hand onto the battlefield, it's such an advantage. And right now, you know, I mean, there are sweepers that could be played, you know, plenty of sweepers that could be played. There are none in FerMTG's deck list. So, you know, Mog knows this. Open Decklist tournament knows there is not even 1 single sweeper that can get it done. The only thing he has to be very conscious of is 1 EE in the sideboard from FerMTG, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but you know, when you can just go all in on that, you just have to just play more creatures than the Dimir deck. Usually an easy task when it comes to Boros.
Right, so that means that, you know, if your opponent is going wide, you kind of have to have those heavy hitter cards here, which I think is why we saw the Oculus come into play so aggressively. I mean, that is 5 flying damage, which allows you to keep parity. The other card that I'm kind of thinking about too is Murktide Regent. So overall, we have 7 graveyard-based threats here. 4 of the Oculus, 3 of the Murktide Regent, and I can't help but notice that in this instance where we're being put under a little bit of pressure here from the Boros side, you know, our graveyard is pretty strained here, and one of our ace cards, Murktide Regent, isn't even castable in this instance.
Yep, agreed. And I want to bring some attention to what Mogged is thinking about right now. Has the ability to go Guide of Souls plus Goblin Bombardment. And if you do that, you get a 4th creature on the battlefield. Goblin Bombardment can sack your cat, deal 1 to, let's say, a Borean Oculus, flip a Johnny, and then you can make another cat and deal 3 to the Oculus, plus then sack said cat to deal with Oculus. So it is possible to get that card off the battlefield right now. You would just lose a decent amount of stuff. It's not
I can't
pretty.
even tell if that's necessarily bad because, like, you know, looking at the other side of the table, you see that Fernando's kind of like light on resources with only the 2 cards in hand. And if you're going to untap and have, you know, Goblin Bombardment alone in play with a follow-up Fable of the Mirror Breaker, honestly, if it brings us to parity or, like, you know, even resources in play, I'm kind of ecstatic about that because my follow-up the next turn from the Boros perspective is going to be a slam dunk.
Yeah, and you can also, so you sack the cat here. We'll see where this damage goes. If it's face, it is the Oculus. So yeah, now you get to a Johnny, deal 3 more to the Oculus, and I would actually sack the Regavan since you have a redundant copy. And then you can just recast that, leaving this battlefield with Guide of Souls, Cat Warrior, Flip to Johnny, Bombardment up against a Psychic Frog and a 2/2 Manifest. Not bad.
So then what could Fernando possibly draw here really to escalate the board today? I suppose there is this issue of the Psychic Frog. Seems like that's going to be able to actually just get flying by exiling 3 cards from the graveyard. And that would take down the Ajani, in fact.
Yeah, so, or you could just attack Psychic Frog at a Johnny, and if there's a chump block, which almost assuredly there would be, because a Johnny can just remake the token, you know, then you've at least kind of controlled it, but Psychic Frog does not, no, it does still draw a card when you attack a Planeswalker, so yeah, I think this is an easy flying deal with the Johnny draw card then.
Yeah, and that leaves you now with Spell Snare for something scary like a follow-up of Johnny and Fatal Push to just handle the board. The only downside here is that the Goblin Bombardment does allow for some like synergistic plays depending on like the top decks that we're going to run into from Mogg's side. But overall, now I'm going to say with that Fatal Push pickup, oh goodness. All right, for MTG, I see now, Corey, where your fandom comes from.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I think you're 100% right, though. Like, I absolutely hate playing against Goblin Bombardment. Even if you're just trying to answer stuff on a 1-for-1 basis, you're getting that damage every time. So, I mean, this is just going to be an extremely close game here where there's no obvious person ahead.
Yep, a little bit of a tight play here, taking care of the Guided Souls to deny the energy that might come from the Ragavan entering the battlefield. Goblin Bombardment does give me vibes similar to Arcbound Ravager, where it's like once that card is in play, I can't even see the boundless potential the card actually has. You could do so many things, flex in so many different ways.
Yeah.
It truly is a powerful card.
It was really hilarious, the history of Goblin Bombardment. Like, in the early days of Boros Energy, there were 0 copies. And then there was this big historic tournament. You know, I don't know if you remember this. There was a big historic, like, qualifier weekend kind of thing. And then everyone's, like, playing Goblin Bombardment because there wasn't a certain other card available. So, like, oh, I'll put this in there. And then it ended up just being so good with the Johnny that everyone's like, oh yeah, I can play this in Modern too. I'm going to do that for sure. You know, like, I always found it very funny that it was not played in the stock list at all.
Yeah. All right, so I'm thinking about, well, honestly too, that like, I mean, this card seems like it was designed exactly for a Johnny, or maybe like the other way around, right? It's got red permanent that allows you to use the 0, and then worst case scenario, you can use it to flip the Johnny, so on and so forth. Here. I'm going to say after the exchanges that we've seen last turn, really does feel like Fer is in the driver's seat here with the Psychic Frog, just drawing a couple extra cards. Really depends. What does this Fable of the Mirror Breaker find us?
Exactly. That's the thing, though, is like Fernando's deck and just Dimir by design has a lot of air. You know, you can have the nut draw where, like, let's say we Tome Scour into an Unearth or something, you know, like game over, give the game to Fernando. But the thing is Mogg's deck, Boros Energy, it's just so tried and true that, like, you know, you just like never run out of steam. Like, we're gonna see you picked up a Fable. Great. Probably keep that one around. You're going to discard the Parlor. You're either going to draw a land or gas. Fernando can be drawing into more draw spells, situational counter spells that don't look good. So I don't know. It's a toss-up, as Fernando is down to 6, effectively down to 4 with these 2 creatures that you can sacrifice.
Right, and keeping in mind too that Fable that just recently played Fable is going to find potential gas, while the other Fable is going to flip and can put Fernando down to 3. So we're basically like one lightning bolt away, like one flage away from the game just being over.
4, 3, 2. Right now, Fernando's at 2. Right now, Fernando is at an effective 2 because he can attack with these 2 creatures. 2 damage gets in, puts Fernando down to 4, sacks the other one that gets blocked by the frog, puts him to 3. And then we'll see Ragavan and Ocelot Pride both get countered. But, now, look at this. You don't have to sack Reflection right now. And the one thing that Mogged can do next turn is Reflection. Any good target for it? Oh yeah, how about another Reflection? Every single mana is 1 damage from Mogged because you make a copy, sack it. Make a copy, sack it. Make a copy, sack it. So if Fernando doesn't top deck a way to break up the Reflection loop, we are done.
That's so absurd to me because this entire time I did feel like Fernando was in the driver's seat with a lot of these threats lining up very well. We had the early Abhorrent Oculus to come into play here, but that one turn where Goblin Bombardment resolves is snowballing into basically an uninteractable board state. It's just like the pressure that the Goblin Bombardment is putting on making sure Mogged's threats are all answered. It's insurmountable. That's crazy. This card is fantastic in this deck.
Honestly, it just came down to both players basically had the nut draw. That won't be enough. I mean, it's just it's GG here as far as I can see. I mean, I guess you have to attack with Frog. You have to start by attacking with Frog and hope to find something else because that Murktide is nowhere near enough.
Yeah, I'm wondering here if maybe the thought process is, let me play the Murktide first, and then I can use the Frog to boost the Murktide up to some damage. So the next turn I can do some crazy stuff here, but I can't really tell you what the answer is here. You probably just need the mana. You're so behind that you need the mana to find an answer to break this Fable on Fable action. Not
even necessarily. You get to exile non-spells, so it just doesn't matter as far as the timing goes. And now Murktide comes down, and as long as Mogged goes for it, this game is over. But I think something we're very much going to see is Mogged wait till Fernando's upkeep and then go for it, because the deck's so cheap. You can cast all of your spells from FerMTG's side that I could see him waiting, or just goes for it right now.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of forced the issue here with the Fable activation on the copy that's just flipped, right? So that would.
Yeah, you force it, but if you wait for the upkeep, you're not going to attack anyways. You wait for the upkeep and you'll still win the game. And then if there's a removal spell, Fernando wastes some of, quote unquote, some of his mana for that turn. But honestly, it just doesn't really matter because he's got 5 mana. His whole deck costs 2. So go for it now. Go for it in upkeep. It doesn't matter. It's over.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess the one upside here too is that Fernando does have lethal on the crackback. So that's kind of remarkable.
I mean, the one thing about this too is Mogged just had 3 creatures in play, so it was pretty safe for him to go for it because, if there's a removal spell, you just sack the 3 creatures you already had. So I think even if there was a piece of removal, it didn't matter. The piece of removal would have been fired off while the Reflection of Kikidis was still summoning sick.
I mean, even then, I think, because then you just sack. I think this is there's no way, now that I'm thinking about it, that Fernando could have actually won from this exact board state outside of having other cards that just don't exist in the deck. So, pretty powerful showing here from the Boros side of things in terms of the matchup against Dimir. And massive props here to Mogged for just very expertly, playing from a position that seemed not so great and then saying, hey, Goblin Bombardment, do your thing.
Do your thing. And I gotta say, we're about to go watch a finals, a finals before the grand finals of 2 Boros Energy decks. Maybe that's not what everybody is excited for, but I think it's really cool because these were the only 2 Boros Energy decks. So we have that going on. It's a really dominant showing from the deck. And, the more I think about it, the better this deck choice seems to me. Like, I think Breach is your one bad matchup. So if you build your Boros Energy deck that's already good against Dimir and Eldrazi, and you just put every single anti-Breach card available to adjust for that matchup, like we saw, that just seemed like an excellent deck choice. And these kind of Boros Energy decks, I wouldn't recommend for all of you, going into, like, let's say your next regional championship. And I'm not saying that because I'll be playing Breach. I swear. It is because you're going to be playing against a lot more than Eldrazi, Dimir, Boros, and Breach. When it comes to an open field, you're going to play against the Wild Wild West. There's going to be Amulet. You're going to play against Jund, The Rock, all this kind of stuff. But for a tournament like this, players are packing the heat. They're going to play the best decks only. And the metagame call here from our 2 finalists was really, really impressive. So congratulations to them. And now before we go watch that finals, let's give away some more play points, shall we? 500 play points here going to one lucky winner here. Make sure to leave a comment. Leave a comment about what you loved about this match, as there was a lot of stuff. I know if I'm going to be leaving a comment, it's going to be about how I'm a newfound Andrei fan. And, I will be asking for an autograph when, he makes it onto the Pro Tour when I see him at one of these professional events a little later on. So leave a comment. We'll be picking a winner for 500 play points, just like every single video. So we'll come back to the booth here, and we are going to end this video, and we're going to get ready for the finals. There is only 2 more matches to go. We got the finals of Modern, and then the winner of that match is going to go straight to play against Matthew Wright for the grand finals to be the MagicOnline Champion Showcase champion. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.